Well, welcome everybody here to the 20th floor of the Natural Resources Agency headquarters. And for those who are joining online, we are really excited to be together today in conversation with Ashley Shult Langdon. You may know that Ashley wrote this wonderful book, Mildly Scenic, a trail guide to the Lower American River. So today we're going to have a chance to visit with you, understand why you wrote the book, and what's so mildly scenic about the Lower American River. Just a word, this is one of our Campus Connect series. So this discussion is one of many where we bring leaders from across our agency together to talk to big thinkers, people doing great things across the state. We have a mission to help all Californians and nature thrive together. And so part of this is inspiring ourselves in the work. And we're really psyched, Ashley, that you're here to help inspire us.
I'm so stoked to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So talk to us about the origin story of this book. So I live along the American River, like you in Sacramento. Long admired this place, recreated this place, but we've never had a book like this. How did it come to be?
Well, it's a little bit of that. When Andy, my husband, and I moved here almost a decade ago at this point, we looked for a guidebook at the time to learn about hikes in the area, and maybe some of you guys have those books, but I had, 60 hikes within 60 miles of Sacramento, and there's a few more. And a lot of them take you really far from Sacramento, and so, and not, along our own river, so yeah. That was sort of surprising to me. And then when the pandemic shut everything down, I left my job to take care of my kiddos. They were really little, 3 and 5, and they could not go 60 miles out of Sacramento. And so I was kind of forced to just figure out it on my own, little by little, about the American River and where to go. And before long, I had just collected so many amazing adventures, and I just felt like I might as well put it into a book if nobody else has, right?
That's incredible. So when was the point? So it's the pandemic. We're all restricted to our homes. You're taking your kids out there. You're sort of exploring. At what point do you start to get the idea that, like, well, maybe I'll do something as ambitious as this?
Yeah, I was definitely not thinking about that during the pandemic because we were all just kind of like putting fires out,
Yeah.
And having meltdowns. So it wasn't really until kind of like there were certain moments within the pandemic where I would, go and have this incredible day and I'd share it with a friend and they'd be like, where? And I'd be like, the river, like right here. And so those conversations were kind of like, amassing in my brain and thinking like, this is so funny that I have this knowledge that other people don't, and it's so close to us and so right here, and it's free and it's accessible and we could all go do this. But it wasn't until the kids got back into school in like 2022 that I went into the East Village bookshop, if you guys know it, in East Sac, and Sabrina, the owner, I asked her again, like, is there a book out there that I'm missing that's a little bit more specific to the trails along the river? And she said, no, you should write it. And
And you did. I noticed that she's on the back of your book.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's my local bookshop.
Great. She's great. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the American River, because even those of us who live in the Sacramento area may not know its protected status, and of course the name of the book is a play on words.
Yes. Yeah, so the Lower American River, the stretch that runs between the confluence downtown and Hazel, so to Nimbus Dam, that's all a protected wild and scenic river. So wild and scenic, federally and state protected. And that's something I didn't actually know until I was already writing. I'd already kind of written a lot of the book, and I was now trying to kind of figure out the intro chapter. So I'm doing some research on the river, and I stumbled across that, and I was just pretty floored. Like, I wasn't raised in Sacramento, so I was raised in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area is kind of a special snowflake. They have all their special things, and so nobody thinks about Sac. And I'm like, how is this possible that we are on a wild and scenic river, and that's not like the main thing? Like, we drive into Sacramento, it's like home of the wild and scenic river.
Right.
I was kind of like floored by that. So that was sort of I already loved the river at that point, but then I was like, wow, this is really incredible. So the title was sort of a play on that, which is like, wild and scenic and mildly scenic. It was just sort of a fun alliteration for me, and not to take it too seriously and not to overpromise, because it's
mildly scenic.
yeah, like
I think it's a really apt description because it's a beautiful river, but it's a river that's been impacted by 150 years of development, right? So there's tailings on some part of it. There's a lot of evidence of a lot of human activity.
yeah, and it continues to really be meddled with and shifted and changed depending on kind of the forces that are at bay. I mean, I think that's the interesting thing about it being an urban river, and I think if you're thinking just where you can see the river from the roads, like I'm thinking like Highway 80 or 5 even, or Watt Avenue or Sunrise. I mean, when you're looking down, maybe you don't consider it a place that you want to hang, but there's 23 miles of it, and it's once you kind of get onto the parkway, the sound of the city is gone, and you feel like you could be very far away, I think, from an urban environment, and that's, I think, what was really compelling to me about it.
Totally. And talk about the parkway, because as I understand it, I mean, it's a long parkway, and it's pretty unique. I mean, it's kind of an amazing recreational amenity we have along the river.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine a lot of you are familiar with the parkway, but so there's the bike path, the bike trail. It's called a trail. I prefer to call it a path, but because it's paved, and it goes from downtown, all the way up to Folsom, and lots of people know about that. However, also there's a green belt, on both sides of the river. So while the path that you can bike is only on one side, it crosses at one point, but you still have the other side of the river to recreate on, and there's trails on both sides, and there's probably a good quarter mile of buffer between the neighborhoods and the river, of just wildlife and discovery. So that part is it should be protected under the Wild and Scenic Act, and there's kind of all these forces that are constantly sort of in tension with protection.
Totally, and I imagine there are a lot of people that played into, well, one, the river being protected as a wild and scenic river, and then creating this incredible path that we have.
Yeah.
I'll say that not every river in California has that parkway. We have in Fresno a remarkable river, the San Joaquin River, and we have a state conservancy, the San Joaquin River Conservancy, and the vision is to build a San Joaquin River Parkway, because you literally have the river in the backyard of Fresno, and there's a lot of Fresno residents that can't get out there.
Yeah.
And I get to go there and always say, yeah, I understand what you all are trying to do, because it's been done in Sacramento.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think what's interesting is that we have the entry points, we have the parking lots, and we have some infrastructure for sure, but it's also kind of wild out there. There's not, I think a lot of folks who live in Sacramento, at least in my conversations, are using the parkway, are thinking of the river as like Lake Natoma, which is also, I think, we consider it the river too. But Lake Natoma, everything above Hazel is state park, under the state park. So it has more funding. You can just feel sort of like there's more infrastructure up there. There's like more bathrooms. There's like a lifeguard tower. There's just like other amenities I think that people feel comfortable with. And then everything below Hazel, is all county parks. And so I mean, you guys are probably the ones to ask about this, but just, fewer funding. So it's just, there's not as many signs. There's not as much like, when you get there, you don't feel, you're kind of like, how did I find this? So I think it's harder for people to find, which is why I wrote the book, because I think if you don't know that it's there, you might just skip it altogether.
Well, and for those who haven't actually checked out this book, it's amazing in a lot of respects. I mean, one is it's really beautifully illustrated, and it's really user-friendly. So, I like a lot of Sacramentans, I've got a couple places I go to, but as I was reading this book, I've got like 5 places I want to go to based on this, and you've got the sun exposure, the beach type, the trail type, the activities, so you can really be targeted about where you're going.
Yeah. So when I was putting the book together, I was thinking, there's like, just as if you were saying, somebody said, hey, where should I go in Sacramento for the weekend, there's like, well, depends what you want to do. Like, do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be getting good food? Do you want to be out, like which neighborhoods, which areas would you point your friends to? And I feel the same way about the river. There's so much variety from the bottom of the river to the top. You've got down here, there's a whole lot more grape and it's more sort of like marshy. There's a lot of great sand. Like if you have sand, people or dogs that love sand. But also, by the time you get up to the top of the river, there's like pine trees and granite, and it's got that sort of smell of like just before you get up to the foothills. So there's just a lot of variety, and I wanted to kind of put that out there as like, whatever the images that we have of the river, it might really be, your mind might be blown if you go somewhere, like 10 minutes up the river.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I was doing a little bit of a test because I go to this one part of the river I go to most weekends, Paradise Beach.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, did Ashley nail Paradise Beach? Does she know Paradise Beach as much as I do? And because I think there's like this secret beach area that I always take my dog to, but she's got that area noted here. And I learned our mutual friend Jen Eckerly and I were talking because we both walk on that area. And you said this area is sometimes known as Beaver Trail because the evidence of beaver, which is really cool. This spring was blowing my mind to see how many trees the beaver were trying to take down.
Totally, yeah. I don't know if you've seen, because recently I was there and there's like beaver, way high. And I'm like,
really?
how did it get up there? So I put it up to social media, like, does anybody know, is that a beaver? Like, do they climb trees? Like, I don't think they do, but anyway, I think it's because the river, ebbs and flows, and when it's high, they can reach better. That's the theory.
Well, let's talk about that because we're getting out of the summer, and of course, summer is the time that people get on the river because it can be really hot up here. And so the river is great for everybody, whether you're swimming, fishing, rafting, just going on to hang out. But you talk about the seasons on the river. So talk about what we can do on the river in the different seasons.
Yeah. Because I kind of mapped out, for me, each chapter is like a couple of close beaches you can have a picnic on, or just hang out, or if you're with somebody like an adult or a child that can't go very far, it's a great option. And then there's these other longer trails that are great for running. I'm a trail runner, but also just hiking in general. And so for me, kind of like the discovery was really land-based, because our kids were so small that I couldn't really take them out in the water much. I'm doing that a lot more now. But I would say, the wildflowers in the spring are, phenomenal. There's so many exposed rocky washes out along the river that the lupin are just like blanketed, and the poppies and everything. So I have all my favorite, wildflower spots, of course. And then my favorite thing in the fall and the winter is the Scenic salmon, which is why it's also federally protected, one of the reasons.
Has anyone seen the salmon in the river, in the American River? Okay, if you live in the Sacramento area and you haven't been up there in the winter to see the salmon return, it's incredible, and you have to do it. I stumbled upon it my first year up here. Explain what that is.
Oh my gosh, so the Chinook, come up in the fall run salmon, they come up to spawn and at the top of the river, and of course there's the Nimbus hatchery, which is a great place to go year round and learn about their life cycle and see the salmon themselves. But if they don't, a lot of them spawn before they even make it up there. There's been a whole lot of human interventions, I think in a positive way, to support the salmon in the last few years, and so there's a couple of channels that have been dredged out specifically to make a habitat for the salmon. So, Upper Sunrise has one, Sailor Bar has another, for example. They tried it out at Ansel, but it doesn't seem like it's that successful right now near FEA. But because they're they're big salmon and they come up for like November 1st or so, certainly through Christmas, and they're leaping and they're competing for opportunities to mate, and then the females are creating their reds and everything. Anyway, it's incredible, and every time I'm out there, especially the first time I see it in the season, I'm just like crying. It's so amazing, and you can be. It's
the life cycle. It's salmon that were literally born here.
Yeah.
They go out to the ocean. They swim around for 2.5 years, and they come back to the same exact place. They know where to find it to complete their life cycle.
It's magic. Yeah. It's amazing, and you can see it as close as I am to the farmer. And you don't. it's a really amazing, wild experience. So that's my favorite thing in the winter. But I mean, the Parkway is so exposed and in some places, but there's also like so much canopy and shade. And so what I've tried to put out in the book a lot is just there's which riverbanks are going to be morning sun and where you're going to get kind of the shade. And because honestly, on a morning like today, I was looking, I went for a run. I was looking for not exposed because it's a warm morning, but like on a January morning, I want to be running in the sun. That might be my only sunshine I get in the day. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to kind of find your sunny or your bluff views or whatever it is. And so I think seasonally, to me it's year round. I'm out there. And
Totally.
It's my favorite thing.
Totally. I'd say word of caution on the salmon. I brought my dog out there the first year, who ended up rolling in a decomposed salmon carcass, and that is impossible to get out. It's pretty intense. So the salmon go, they spawn, and then they die.
Yes.
And sometimes they're washing down the river. Sometimes they're you come upon a gigantic salmon carcass on the.
Totally. Yeah, it can be stinky if that's not your jam. I think, and so maybe some of you know this, but in my research too about just like, because the salmon, they at first it seems alarming, like why are all these dead salmon out here? But that's part of the life cycle, like you said. And our West Coast, the salmon that come up, they leave all those nutrients at the top of the river, so they're bringing it back up from the ocean and like flushing the tops of our rivers and our foothills with with all this like rich nitrogen. And so anyway, so it's all by design, and the animals and the trees. It's one of the reasons why we have these giant trees on the West Coast and not on the East.
And I'll say, you mentioned some of the restoration efforts along this stretch of the American River. Really proud that the Natural Resources Agency and its departments have been making these investments, because we're working to bring back salmon. Salmon are that keystone species that really defines the ecosystem that we've lost in so many California rivers.
Totally, and you can really see. I mean, just in the years that in this decade, every year there's more.
Yeah,
which is exciting.
So I want to talk to you about the journey of making a book, because some of us might have an inkling of doing something like this, but wouldn't even understand where to start. So you had this notion of once you got really excited about learning about these different places, you learn that there's not a book, and you say, well, I want to make one. How does that even happen? How did this come to being?
Well, you keep the expectations really low. That's what I did for myself. Like, I'll just see what I can put together, and then if it never becomes a book, like no big deal. But the world will not be, we already have no book. So the best I can do is provide something a little bit better than nothing. And so, I started, I didn't have a computer at the time, which is funny because I got laid off from my job, which was in travel and whatnot, but I would use our family computer laptop when my husband was in the office. So I only had 2 days to work on it. But I just started a Word document, like organized it into my chapters. So like I said, I have the 18 chapters. So like Discovery, number 1, number 2, it's Sutter's, 3's, Paradise, and so on.
Working your way up the river.
So I kind of was like, I spent some time figuring out, my favorite sort of 5 adventures that I wanted to put in each of my 18 chapters, and then I just started writing. And I've been a traveler all my life, and I'm big on Lonely Planet guides and things like that. So I think those have been sort of cooked into my brain since the beginning of time. And so I'm kind of, if I were going to write something, I want it to be succinct. I'm not going to write a whole ton. For me, trail guides that have like, look at the oak tree and the look west to the oak trees. I'm like, I don't read any of that. I just skim right through it. So I wanted it to be like user friendly, and there's already a couple of great books on the Parkway anyway that cover like flora and fauna and the history and everything. So I didn't think I needed to like do that. I just wanted it to be the trail guides. So I wrote it. It took about a year, and then I wanted to make it look pretty and put it into a book form. And so I ended up hiring Greg Traverso, he's the one that did the cover design, and I really reached out to him as somebody to do the graphic design layout, make the words on the page look nice. And
which is important for a trail guide.
right, you know what I mean? I wanted it to be kind of bite-sized, and I wanted all the things in it, but he was just so much fun to work with, and he came up, he was just, so for the next year, we worked on that. I was able to be kind of like the, you know, I would look through, you know, books that I thought were cool and send him ideas that I liked, what I don't like, you know, this is more, but, you know, so we worked together for a while, and then the third piece was the maps. And then I got to, you know, but neither Greg nor I knew how to make trail maps. I don't have any background in that, nor does he. So we reached out to the Sac State Geography Department.
Cool.
Did you know this?
No.
So yeah, you know, we're at the very end of the project, and I really want to get the book out there. It's been 2 years in the making, so I'm like, it has to have good maps. And I was basically going to start watercoloring.
And maps are pretty important.
They're kind of the main thing. So, so I reached out to this. I thought, well, if I don't know anybody who has GIS, a background in GIS, but I bet the Sac State Department would. So I asked them, you know, hey, do you know anybody you could refer to me that I could hire or talk to? And they were like, don't hire anybody, come right in. Like, we'll assign it to one of our classes. So they, like, within like 6 weeks, I had like all my maps done.
No way. That's such a cool story.
It was so fun. They were really thrilled to have something interesting and like local and useful to the community, like, you know, to collaborate in. And then they were like, this is so much better than what we were going to assign them.
And then they can actually, you know, put it on their resume.
Totally.
To develop this.
Yeah, they were all just about to graduate. It was in the fall. It was a fall semester, so a couple of them were like launching right after that, and they were able to use it as like, you know, a way to get a job after.
Wow. So how good did it feel when the first actual book was set? Like, what was the feeling like?
Oh, I mean, yeah, so good. It's just it looks real, you know, like a real real book. There were lots of times along the way where I was like, this still looks like a high school project. You know? So I was like, really wanted it to look and feel, you know, like a real book. So yeah, it feels. I mean, I use it all the time for myself, even because, you know, there's a lot out there. So, this is exactly the way my brain works. Like, I want to open it to, like, I want to go from the bottom of the river to the top. I want to know, like, I wanted just a couple of good options that have been vetted. Like, that's what I want. And so a lot of times I'll look at my own book, like, where should I go? You know, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there, you know?
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'll say one of the benefits of interviewing environmental writers is understanding what makes you tick. You know, we've talked to Obi Kaufman, who does a lot of books on California. Last month we talked to Josh Jackson about the beautiful book he has on Bureau of Land Management lands. So Ashley, what do you think it led? I mean, not all of us do this. We might have an idea about wanting to do this, but you followed through and got it done. Like, what about your life and sort of, you know, what's been your trajectory that brings you to actually a project like this?
It's a really good question. I think, you know, my background is in travel programs. I used to take lots of kids overseas to international, you know, on summer programs, on like year-round programs. And so for me, kind of like understanding my environment, exploring and then wanting to teach others about it is a very common thread throughout my life. Like all the jobs I've had, you know, wilderness leader, group, you know, international trip leader. My parents are teachers, so like we're all kind of explorers a little bit. So just like kind of going off and exploring something and then wanting to be like, hey everybody, check this out. You know, that's very common. So the book though was sort of an extra. I don't know how. I think I just had time, and I felt like it was like I really wanted to organize everything that I knew, and because it wasn't already out there, it was like kind of like housekeeping in my brain. I was like, I just want to put it all into these chapters. I want it to be there. I want everybody to know that it's there. And I think it was just a little bit of, it was an obsession. I mean, I was always like thinking about, I still think about it all the time, you know, in the middle of the night, and just thinking about other ways to really like let everybody know. I think part of it too is just like, the whole time I'd be like, I can't believe I know this, but everybody else doesn't seem to know it the way I know it. Like, how is that I get to be the person that gets to know all these things? You know, so I just want to share it.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest things about this book is this is our backyard if we live in Sacramento. And you know, there's a million books on Yosemite and Big Sur, and people travel around the world to these iconic places in California. And oftentimes we overlook the nature in our own neighborhood, or in the case of this, really, you know, miles from where we live.
Totally. Yeah, it's like, we are blessed to be within, you know, an hour or two of like incredible places. And also like, I wasn't getting to those places at that time in my life. And I still really am not as much as I would like to, because we all have different reasons why we can't afford a day or a weekend or, you know, even an hour sometimes. And so, you know, I know for me and also my husband, like we're always out on the Parkway. It's just like the daily dose of nature that we kind of like need in order to feel grounded. Yeah. And so it was sort of, you know, I think it was making me feel sad on the part of like, if people are waiting and building up their vacation time to go far afield, or even driving all the way up to Auburn, you know, which is lovely, but if you don't have the time to do that built into your day, it's so easy to just like, you know, months go by and you don't get to, you know, this morning I saw my first bobcat out on the river.
Wow.
So cool. Ooh, actually, yeah, it was so cool. And so, you know, just an experience like that, I just got the chills thinking about it. Like, the experience like that, I drop my kids to school, I go for a run on the Parkway, I see some bobcats, and then, like, here I am downtown. Like, it's just,
yeah.
You know.
I'll also say, you know, working in this agency with water, it's great to go back to the same place over time, over the year, because you can watch the river, you know, rise and fall. And in the winter, you know, especially really big winters, where there's a lot of room for the river to spread out.
Yeah.
You know, there are parts of the land that I'd never seen inundated, and then all of a sudden it's inundated for weeks at a time.
Totally. Yeah. Especially Beaver Trail is a good example of that. And most of the, because there was a really big winter, what was it, 2022, I think, when I was writing the book, and so I had already put all this investment into writing the book, and then I thought, shoot, I wonder if these trails, maybe the reason why nobody's written this is because the trails disappear, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went out there when it was really high, and the trails are all still there. Beaver's an example of, is not an example of that, but most of them are all along they, you know, stand the test of time. I think they've been around since the Pony Express, and like certainly into the Nisenan. Like most people and animals want to walk along a river's edge if they're going to try and, you know, get from one place to the other, because it's cool and you can get a drink of water. So they're all still there, which is pretty cool. Even though the river, you know, the beach might be swallowed up by a high river, but most of the trails are untouched.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the river's so loved. I think that's this Sunday when Sunday morning when I'm going to go out and I'm going to meet a woman who I think by day she's a dentist, but she's started an effort to remove abandoned fishing gear from the river, because actually a lot of fishing gear finds its way into the river, you know, lost hook, snapped line, that ultimately can really harm wildlife. And that got me thinking, there are probably so many people that you met along the way who love this river, or organizations that are working to clean it up or protect it. Can you talk a little bit about who you met?
Yeah, she's one of them, Andrea.
Yeah,
that I've met.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, when I'm out there, I always love to chat. If you ever see me out there, please chat me up. I love to chat. But I'm especially like folks who've been, you know, coming out to the Parkway, you know, the fishermen are some of my favorite people to talk to. Because a lot of times, especially like, you know, if they're in their 60s, they've probably been fishing on the river since they're in high school. So they have some really cool stories about like the 70s on the river, which, you know, was really different. Like you could drive right onto the bar, you know, the gravel and everything. So it's just interesting to kind of hear how it's changed over the years. But you know, yeah, through this book writing process, I was, you know, I've been able to connect with Save the American River Association. Those folks are the umbrella organization to all of the grassroots orgs that protect the river, because there's so many miles of rivers, and every like neighborhood kind of has its own, you know, coalition to protect their area. So Save the American River is sort of like, they've been the stewards of the river since the 60s. And any fight about, you know, like anything that needs to be fought, to just,
Yeah.
like about
Protect the river.
all the levee work, all, buildings that want to be built, right on the river's edge. It's like they're right in there and they're amazing. So I've had a good time. Really, I learned so much from folks like that who are doing the hard work out there.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'll say that the work to continue to restore the river continues, and there's a Lower American River Conservancy that was established by legislation, and actually Sacramento now Mayor Kevin McCarty took me out shortly after I got this job to share more of what he wants to do, and this was Sutter's Landing Park, where I believe they're going to introduce, if they haven't already, a vendor to actually rent paddle boards and ways to get on the river. Because a lot of us, might have a paddle board in our garage or a kayak in our garage, but a lot of folks don't. So I love the fact that you've got the life jackets along the river,
Totally.
so to protect kids, because that's important. It can be a dangerous river. But then also that increasingly there are these improvements, and his vision is to kind of continue the trail on the south side of the river, ultimately to Discovery Park.
Love it.
Yeah.
I just floated that section from Sutter's down to Discovery for the first time, earlier this season, and I had been putting it off because I expected it to be like garbagey and not very scenic, and it was so lovely. It was just a whole corridor of trees, even going underneath the 5 and the 50 and all that. So and there's been a lot of cleanups in organizations that do that, but I just think the more I think I'm really happy to see more user-friendly ways to kind of interact with the river, because I think there's folks that are gonna blaze through, and then there's folks that aren't just not even gonna bother, and save their nature time for somewhere far away.
Yeah.
And that's problematic for, we have it right here. We don't need to export ourselves and impact other environments necessarily if you're just looking for a trail, by a river to run on.
Totally.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to questions in just a moment, but I'll share. It seems like you're really continuing to be engaged and motivated, inspired by the river. You've got a great website, mildlyscenic.com.
Yep.
Incredible swag, all this great stuff that you can, with the logo. But also you're really active, and you continue to be active. What's been the reception of the book, and what's your vision for the river moving forward?
Oh gosh, it's been way more fun than I ever anticipated putting this book out in the world. I thought, like I said earlier, I thought it could just be a tool that people could pick up, and leave it at that. But it's been just a beginning of so many new conversations and friendships and discoveries, both within the river, but then just even the greater community of SAC. And I think, SAC is just a lovely place to launch something like this. There's a big pride of SAC pride, and so it's been fun to kind of find the one thing that I know, and then people want to have me on and talk to me about the book, and I'm in all the bookstores and in the newspapers or whatever. People just want to. People are very receptive to it, and I think my fear had been that I stumbled upon folks who were like, why are you spilling the beans on this river? But it's been the complete opposite. People are just if they know the river, it's like, I'm so glad somebody put this together. And if they don't know the river, they're like, wow, I had no idea what we were overlooking this whole time. What a joy to live in Sacramento, and you didn't move here for the river, but that's why we stay here. The river.
Well, and I'll share, because we're probably joined online. A lot of people in the room probably live in Sacramento, but we're joined online by colleagues and friends from across the state. And you too can write the local version of this book.
Totally. Oh my gosh, yes.
Because we need more user-friendly guides to the nature just right around us.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's all trails, and there's different apps that kind of collect different trails, but there's a lot of these trails were actually never mapped before. So even if you're looking at all trails, you can't, maybe one or two of these are out there, but the algorithm, nothing is picking up because there's no actual trail maps out there. So, building them with Sac State was really special and totally doable. And I think that I would love, if anybody wants to talk about recreating that in your local area, it doesn't take much more than just like a running app in your pocket to get the data, and then like some great students to help make it happen.
Amazing.
Really, yeah.
Inspirational. Let's turn it over. Let's open it up to questions that you may have for Ashley. Yes.
Yeah, I can only imagine that the research for this had to be a blast. You got some pretty interesting. I'm curious, what's the one piece of information that stuck out to you that either didn't fit the scope of the book or you weren't otherwise able to include? What's something you wish you could have shared?
That I didn't get to put in the book?
Right.
Oh man. There's a lot in that book. But I think something that comes to mind because I'm doing it now is the paddling, you know, the surf, everything on the surface now. So I'm like, now that the kids are big enough, put them on the stand up with me, and we'll kind of explore all these little inlets that some of them I'm like, oh, I remember coming here on trail, but some of them you can't access unless you're on a boat. And so now I have a little bit more perspective, I think, on the flow of the river than I had previously.
And I'll share this as like an amateur person that floats down the river and paddles. It's actually helpful to understand, you know, where to put in, where to put out, how long it takes.
Yeah.
What are the sketchy rapids, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I've been chatting up people wherever I see them about that too, because there's a lot of people that know the river very well and have been paddling it for years. And so, yeah, I'm like, where can you like go up the eddies and then come back down? Because you don't always have two drivers to shuttle you. So there's just like, if anybody knows about it, like let's talk, because I'm always getting new ideas and just like how to make that happen rather than just, you know, one-way flow, which is also really fun.
Yeah, and seeing the river, you know, floating down is so interesting. Fun fact you probably know is at the San Juan Rapids, which are one of the larger rapids, you know, downriver from sort of Rancho Cordova, right? There's a volunteer scuba diver, or snorkeler, I should say, who sits there and actually collects things that people have lost, including wedding rings and iPhones and everything else, because people come down that river, you know, sometimes inebriated or in a raft that they haven't, you know, ever been in, and they spill.
Yeah.
And so this guy's got the umbrella, the lawn chair, right? And he's just waiting.
And I'm like,
He's got a Facebook page too.
He does, yeah. I follow him. I want to meet him though because one of the things that I really wanted, one of my original plans of the river of the book was I wanted to map the bottom of the river.
Oh, cool.
And because it's, you know, if you know the river, you know, like there's you know, there's places where it cuts deep and you can swim, and then there's places where it runs really shallow, and it's great for wading, you know, depending what you're looking for. And so, you know, I know that, and yet I really wanted to, because I wanted to put that into the river, but I'm like, it just became a thing where I should talk to Zach State again about doing that, just like sonaring it and creating.
That's a sequel.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because that guy I've read some articles of him, and he's like, he knows all the places where things will collect.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not gonna tell anybody about that, because that's my stuff, but he knows the bottom. I was like, that's so cool that you know the bottom of the river so well that you could, you know, anticipate where something might.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to get everything put together and did research, like going out and spending time out there?
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, so 2020 and 2021 were all the discoveries, you know. So I was out there, but not knowing I was going to write a book, but I was out there like, you know, multiple times a week with and without the kids. So that was 2 years of kind of research, I would say, and then a year of writing, and then a year of graphic design, and another kind of half of a year to put together the maps and make sure the book was like tight. So, you know, all in all, it took about almost four years or so. And, you know, Sabrina told me at the bookshop, she said, it'd probably take about 6 months or so. Great. That's why I try. If somebody said 4 years, I would be like, no thanks. But I can't think that far ahead.
So are your kids totally sick of going to the river with you?
Yes and no. They always, some of them, they say it, like they'll, you know kids. But then whenever we get out there, they're always like having a blast. So for me, it's fun because I'm running and then also going out with my kids. You know, we don't run. Sometimes we do, but mostly we're just playing. And so that, you know, if I'll run, see a place and be like, oh, I gotta go back there. Like the river's like perfect for this right now, or like the conditions are, you know, and then we'll go back on the weekend, or vice versa. Like I'll take them out and then be like, oh, let that trail looks fun, I'll go back. So both of them kind of inform each other, but yeah, so I take them anyway.
Totally.
It's my favorite place to parent, is like, because they're very active and very, like, they want to manipulate their environment as much as possible. So
Yeah.
nature is very, like, natural consequences, they could do what they need to do, like throw rocks or whatever. But
And scale is great for kids. The scale is great for kids because you can go out there for 45 minutes. It's not like heading into a big
Yeah.
state park trail, which is a huge undertaking for the day. You
totally.
can pop in and pop out. And I find with my daughter, she's got her special places that she wants to go back to, so it
Yeah.
kind of feels a little bit magical for the kids.
Totally, yeah.
Very cool. Yes, here.
I like I'm on the park really every day, and one of the challenges I have being out there, I have like an intrinsic appreciation for nature, but it's love being outside, but finding more novel things to explore. Some of it sometimes looks the same. Is there any like particular things that you do to kind of keep it interesting, so you're not maybe just seeing the same thing all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I go out all year, so the seasons are constantly kind of changing. I definitely vary up my entry points all the time. So if you have the ability to do that, because my kids actually, we take them up to school in Carmichael, but we live in East Sac. So lucky for me, I get to be up and down the corridor all the time at the 50, and so I can kind of like choose my entry points, and so I might not see the same place, like I went to a place today that I hadn't, the little stretch of it, I hadn't actually run that stretch for probably a year. So that felt really exciting. I was like, oh, look at how cool, and so I like to take pictures. That's kind of a way to vary it for me, because it gets me kind of focused on like whatever is blooming or whatever acorns are drop. Just kind of, it gets me kind of focused in that. And then with the kids, I for sure like to vary it up. I'll always bring like one toy, like a binoculars, fishing pole, like a bucket, Easter candy that's been sitting around for a year. Something that gets them kind of like, it just feels a little bit novel to them,
Yeah, I'll also share that there are two great apps that I use to have a lot of fun out there. One is iNaturalist, which a lot of us know. It's just essentially a free way to identify plants, animals, and the cool thing about iNaturalist is it then gets downloaded into a database that is the world's largest scientific database. That's really cool. And then one that I got turned on to, I don't know, Gabrielle or others, if you turn me on to it, is Merlin, which is the Shazam for birds, which is also incredible. Because I'm not an expert bird watcher, but so understanding what I'm hearing is really cool out there. So yeah. You do that too? Yeah, pretty amazing.
I have a kind of practical question. It sounds like you go there pretty regularly. Do you usually drive there in a car? If so, do you buy like a yearly pass? And then my other question is, in the book, do you have any alternative transportation, like recommendations for certain spots for people who don't have a car or want to drive there?
Yes, so I drive mostly, and I have a Parks Pass, so, and it's what, like, I think $70 for the
And is
year.
that a county parks pass usually?
Yeah,
Okay.
County Parks Pass. I also have a State Parks Pass. But the County Parks Pass, yes, $7 for your entry each time, and I'm out there more than 10 times for sure a year. So that makes sense for me. But in my book, I have like there's so many alternative neighborhood park, like the parkway is just there on the other side of the neighborhood. So if you know where to park in a neighborhood, you can access the parkway from all, both sides, up and down, without actually using the parkway parking lot. So I have a lot of those in the book. You can also, I love dropping pins and stuff, to just ideas of how to wander yourself onto the park. If you think of a stretch that you want to so see, but you don't have the Parks Pass or whatever. So that's something that I do. And then in terms of alternative ways to get on it, I guess I didn't put in when I was talking to American River Parkway Foundation, and they had just worked with Google Maps or whatever to put the light rail stops on the maps because they weren't there before, which is crazy. So they're working on that. I probably should have put that in there, but I didn't.
That's a really good call. And then also it's such a bikeable place, goes without saying, because it's got a big bike path. But I see a lot of people just, if you're even in Sacramento and you've got, it's flat here, it's great, so you don't have to be some intense mountain biker.
Right.
Get yourself over there and just lock up and then get on the water.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, my husband's a cyclist, and like, so the joke is that it takes me like all year to do all of my trails. There's a lot of trails out there, hundreds of miles. And then like Andy will just do it like before dinner, like a big lap, from East Sac up to Folsom and back again. So, both sides of the river even, right? So
It's experience in different ways. Yes.
So if you're a big outdoor guidebook nerd, you know that there are often multiple editions of guidebooks. So like, you get a climbing guide 1 year, and then 10 years later, there's another climbing guide, and what have you. So do you envision this as a long-term project? Because I've heard some things that didn't make it in there. So is this a long-term project?
I mean, I only think in 6 months chunks, so. But yeah, I think it's gonna have to be at some point, I think there's gonna have to be another edition in another year or two. I mean, even when you're saying Paradise Beach, like from the time I wrote it in 2022 to the time it was about to be published in 2024, everything was straight clean out there. And I was like, well, shoot, those are all my trails. Like my chapter has to be completely rewritten. So so there's sections for sure that's going to need some updates, and there's a couple other like the Cassis property. There's a couple other little properties that I just didn't map, and it would be kind of fun to get those in there. So yeah, and like a paddling adventure would be kind of fun too. I'm not a fisherman, but like I bet that would be a really cool one to kind of like collab with somebody who knew a lot about fishing.
That would be great.
So I know you've been doing like a lot of student engagement with bookstores and places like this. Are you gonna do anything like in person out at the river? Do like a guided walk?
Sounds like a leading question.
Well, I do have a couple. So if you go to my website, mildyscenic.com, there's a events page. This is the first one that's listed, but then there's a bunch. September I have a couple hikes, like FEA, I'll do a hike. I'm gonna do one at Gristmill, which is my chapter 6, as a collaboration with a Seat at the Table, which is an Elk Grove bookstore. So there's a couple that are coming up that are already on the calendar, and then in a way I've been thinking about that. I mean, I gotta live my life like literally second to second. Sometimes I'm in the car and being like, okay, I'm in my running clothes, like where should I go? Like, I'm like, you know what I mean? So I don't even know. There's a little bit of like I would love to be out there with other people, and then I would require like to think a little bit down the line. But I do have some that are already in September.
Yeah, so check it out. It's an easy website, and that's a double header at FEO because you're doing like a nature talk followed by a hike, right?
Yeah.
Or like a talk about the book followed by a hike.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, just one more question.
Thank you so much for the talk. I was wondering if you're familiar with any of the groups that are raising public awareness about Army Corps' proposal to remove trees along the lower American River between Howe and Watt.
Yes, I'm tracking that for sure, and it's a long saga, right? But I think after we all saw what happened at Paradise, and then again in front of Sac State, it's just like heart-wrenching to imagine that also coming up further upriver to where the Army Corps is trying to do it next. So I am not an expert on any of it's so complicated. It's fraught with all kinds of different interests and voices, but so Save the American River is kind of like the folks that I am out there with and supporting and amplifying their message for sure. But have you been following it? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So it's just a roller coaster up and down. In fact, the other time I was in this building was to provide public comment back in May against just like the unilateral kind of work that there is planned to do. I think there's other ways to go about it. But yeah, anyway, so I'm tracking it too, and thank goodness for the folks that are grassroots and making their voices heard too.
And for those that aren't, this is really a balancing act because the Army Corps of Engineers, which is the federal agency that protects us from flood, is, identified the American River watershed, essentially where we live, if we live in Sacramento, at the confluence of the Sacramento, as one of the most flood vulnerable cities in the country, maybe second only to New Orleans. So our agency and others have spent a lot of money trying to build up the levees to protect the neighborhoods adjacent. Challenge, of course, is that the traditional practices to do that remove the vegetation. And the vegetation is that riparian corridor that makes the parkway so special. So we've definitely been tracking, sharp community concerns around taking out, oak trees that are 100 years old. And how do we minimize that while making the levees safe to protect against, what will be the inevitable flood on the river? So thank you for that question. Time goes fast when you're having fun, and we're almost to the top of the hour. I wanted to introduce Jacqueline or Olivia because we're going to do a little fun thing here to conclude. And Ashley, I think you can be our game show host here.
We have a raffle, so I entered everyone's names, and you can go ahead and click the wheel.
So we have really creative team, Olivia, Jacqueline, and others. And so thanks to Ashley, we've got some donated swag here. And what we're going to do is, I don't exactly know how this works, but it's a big pinwheel. It's a big roulette wheel, and you're going to spin it. And everyone's name, by virtue of signing in. Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, ready? And then just get drum roll.
Let's do it. There it is. Okay, everybody in the room, believe it or not, your name is on this roulette wheel. And what are we raffling off first? What are we raffling off
What are we
first?
doing first? I guess the hat. That's a good one.
Paige. Feel that? Paige here? Yeah? All right, we can get that back to her.
Okay, sounds good. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
All right, here we go.
next one.
Lovely water bottle next.
That is cool water.
That is to Katie. And then last but not least, this handsome Patagonia carrying bag.
Satisfying.
No, it's pretty cool. And this prize goes to Haley Miller.
Haley Miller.
Well, Ashley was nice to bring along copies of her book, which I believe she would sign for us. If we want to come, if anybody wants to purchase one, I strongly recommend it. Mine is getting good use, as well as other things. Most importantly, huge thanks for doing this project. Incredible as somebody who lives in Sacramento, I think I speak for a lot of us, and for folks that are working on protecting this resource. And also thanks for coming and spending an hour with us.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks all for joining, whether it's in person or online. And if you have other recommendations for authors, leaders, big thinkers for us to be in dialogue with, please let us know. Have a great day.
Yeah.